I think we're entering an era or a time where we really figure out certain possibilities. And what I would like to stretch in my little talk for today, all the technology, I think what we have just seen is really interesting in terms of where the industry actually right now is. But for me, it's really rather important working for the creative class, working for the industry. How do we use these possibilities? A year ago, I cleaned up my factory in a way, and I work with a team, and we're based in Cologne, and we have like 90 people. And I was really astonished about the amount and the stacks of magazines I've put on. When I look at it today, do I have to feel that it's all the past already because it's all printed, it's all paper, it's nothing worse? But in the long run, I think it's really important to understand that digitalization and working and getting content right, it's all about quality. These are all magazines I'm working for over the years. I haven't started with one, so one after the other took on. And what I realized with this is the beauty of working on magazines is that you always engage with different people, and they all carry a different attitude. And it's interesting to see when I'm working through the months, I have several magazines, like when I go into these magazines, 032C from Berlin, they're a little bit more daring, they try to really push the edge. Then you have Garage magazine, which I've started with Dasha Sukova from Russia, and which is later on, I will give you a little insight of that. And of course, Brandeis, which I found with Gabriele Fischer already, 17 years ago. So what's interesting again is if you have a magazine like this and you work with a few people and they would have the idea how daring can be a brand, how daring can be a magazine. And this is interesting in terms of that you say, actually we're doing a magazine, and a magazine is always about shaping an attitude. So you think about the imagery, you try to think who is the right people to collaborate with, because this attitude has to appeal to a certain community. And this community you like to talk to, you try to get engaged with them. And now it's where digital becomes interesting, actually, because these magazines, they appear twice a year. But they all know within this economy of attention, they have to have a kind of feedback more regularly. So for them, websites, social media is incredibly interesting, especially for O32C, because they now start as well with their own gear. Let's say another magazine is Kidswear. It's very playful, and I had always this idea when I started already in the 80s and 90s that I believe in an identity which is not stable. I always believed in the flow of life. It was always these 4 letters: love, intelligence, freedom, evolution, all these kind of meta themes. And at the same time, with Kidswear, it's a kind of playfulness. We try to shape the zeitgeist as well in a way. So I think it's always important not to let's say you establish a kind of a pattern, but at the same time you make sure that you don't get stuck in that pattern. So you have to always, in a way, to be able to open up. The first 2 years I was working on interview, which was as well great for me, coming closer to Andy Warhol, which is, the super guru of everything what we experience these days. Everything is famous, and but these days I have 3 boys. The oldest one is 17. He said, "Papa, I think these days everybody wants to be famous, but they don't want to move anything." And because they like to stay in their comfort zone. And what I like is actually when I hear what Jochen Huber was saying, this kind of technology, I think it's up to us to make this kind of difference, to give this knowledge and this technology a certain importance. We have to find a way to introduce it and bring it back into our everyday rituals. And now slightly I'm going out of this lifestyle market. This is Arch Plus. It's an architectural magazine, and when you see the middle cover, the yellow one, it looks already like there is no information anymore. This was done as well for a special exhibition during the Rim Koolhaas's Architecture Biennial in Venice, and I try to take out much as possible. I try to get more and more minimal to the essence what's really about. And this is fun because, I work, of course, for all these magazines, but at the same time with my teams, we're running on brands. And I could give you hours of this stuff like this, but I just choose a few just to make you understand that where we're coming from, especially in Germany, our roots are really about the Bauhaus, the Ulmer Schule, and brands like, let's say, Bulthaupt, Dornbracht, FSB, Siedler, all these brands I'm working for as well, BMW and Mini, they like these things, they feel comfortable. because this is their heritage, where they're coming from. Everything is pristine, everything is precise, is clean. And this brings in the whole thing about the next generation. And this is where moving types come in as well, because, you know, the surrounding, the cultural context is changing tremendously. It's not like that it hasn't changed before. It's life, and it's changing anywhere all the time, with us or without us. And so when I got into a project with Bulthaup, in the industry it's very important always to make the people understand what we're doing is sustainable, which means it has to stay the test of time. And the situation is the test of time actually means you need to have time to see, does it really work? Unfortunately, these days, we are generation beta. We don't have time. So this is kind of a juxtaposition right now where we thought as well, let's say, shift the context. So I started as well using new textures. And this is something in the industry is super important to create in a time where everything becomes more digital, that we have the feeling as well, it needs to, you know, a soft touch, it has to be fine, you know, because we're very sensitive in a way. And a brand I want to point out at last, and then I start. It's really like Stormrod is a manufacturer in Iserlohn, which I'm working for more than 25 years. And they started with this kind of low-interest product, like a bathroom fitting. It's nothing more boring than that. But when you step back from the product design and you realize these are the standards of today, just making a very nice design, and you work properly with the resources and everything, they realize as well they have to find ways to create a kind of a more hybrid service or whatever. They know with these huge themes, our world, our everyday life, there are several, let's say, mega trends, and it's really like the demographic change. We're all getting older, and in a way there is this healthness, so we become really aware of it. And there is digitalization, and through digitalization we start work on our self-optimization. So we need to perform, and this is for the industry important. And there you have all these kind of Schnittstellen where digital, you know, has an impact in our everyday life. Working on both sides, with the industry and as well with these magazines, I realize actually we're pretty bad with hybrids. But everything what's stable, what's steady or self-contained is somehow uninteresting, especially for the next generation. As I said, I have 3 boys. The youngest one is 10 and 14. They, let's say, we call them in marketing terms digital natives. What does it mean? It's just that I had to go through all that crap in a way, you know, all these different steps of evolution from analog to digital, and had my hard time with it getting in there. And my kids, they grow up. Everything is done. I call them always generation instant. They want to have everything. They have no passion. They click on it, they get it. This is an incredible step for the industry. How do we make markets? You know, when you think about mobility, even the big brands, they know in the economy of sharing, we all know that the next generation don't need necessarily a car, but they want to have access to mobility. And this is where digitalization will change tremendously the whole industry. I got into a project involved by these 4 guys. I mean, it's Lauren Boyle and then the 3 boys. And it's an artist collective. They're called DIS. 2 years ago, because they did research on websites and they came to Dornbracht, a bathroom fitting. And they called me up and said, Mike, we have an idea. Can you do this? We are going to plan making a big sculpture for the audience at the new museum. It's a big show. It was 2 years ago. It was actually the first exhibition about post-internet art. They had this idea, they confronted me with imagery from the kitchens as well from the bathroom, things we've done for our client. So what they said, what happened if we merge these 2 worlds together? You know, we don't have this kind of wall separation anymore between a horizontal shower with a tea station and maybe in the back you have a kitchen block. So what they do is, this is art. And it's funny because the people who are very familiar with the commercial imagery of Dornbracht, they thought this is a new product, but of course it doesn't work like this because, you know, all these kind of safety reasons. But what's funny is actually that this generation tries in a very subversive way to take all these kind of corporate strategies and aesthetics to create imagery where we don't really know where we are anymore. So they want us to feel insecure. And let's have a quick look at this one. Oops. So you see, it's so cheesy, but it's so beautiful at the same time, because you think it's like, I don't know, kind of a commercial, but she's holding this device, which is just replaced by this kind of glass panel. And I thought the whole archive I just had in my factory is actually, and so many more magazines, on this thing. And when I got these people and we met, because through this project they said, Mike, we would love to work with you and your team together because we think you are the right person to understand corporate strategies, structures, but at the same time, through your editorial project, you are able as well to screw this system. This is what we did. So we discussed the whole idea about the identity. And when you see, for example, Oculus Rift, the glasses you have outside, so they're playing on these kind of technology, but they create as well the beautiful surroundings. So they put models in there. You see the Brandenburger Tor, and normally you would say, okay, let's have a look at the Brandenburger Tor, but no, they want to have already this kind of extended reality. And then at the same time, the whole look is very much like Deutsche Bank. And this was the whole idea, because the Deutsche Bank, for them, is the most powerful brand in the world in a way of corporate governance and corporate designs. So we were thinking, okay, we have the number, the figure, the 9, and then we said, okay, the Roman version is much better because it's more graphic. So we did these kind of designs, and now we were talking about textures. And the textures, actually, as you can see, we tried around to be playful, to bring in certain patterns as well, colors. But somehow we always thought, no, it has to be very strong. It has to be Deutsche Bank, because this is something where people really believe in a way. You know, you are in a context with artists, and so they came up with this kind of Getty imagery, because everything had to be super flat, super surfaced. And with these things, with these tests, this is just to find out what is the right texture for this piece, actually, saying the logo. Because later on, we said even the texture, the logo in itself as a sculpture could be created as artworks. But going back to this, so this is actually the corporate design. And together with the typography, we have a very, in a way, I think, not only powerful, it seems even conservative, because somehow it feels backwards, but strong. And then we got into this big project to create the website, and the whole website is as well playing on this imagery and maybe as well these kind of cliches. You know, when you enter the business world, you see these people standing by the flip charts, you know, blah, blah, blah. But now you see with this beautiful girl as well in between, and the slight movement, the little hair, you know, it's like, oh, is this a commercial? Is this real? Is this fun? You know, they bring in a kind of a collage, a mixture of different emotions, and bring in as well these kind of claims we're always working on, and somehow everything feels empty. And this is this kind of subversive momentum, you know, they're creating as well within the art world, because they know how to handle these people in a way. So when you go through all these kind of different devices you have, so you got as well your newsletters, or let's say, or the imagery, and you felt it looks like a corporate brand, but at the same time the imagery feels like a bug. So it feels wrong, especially when you get the newsletters. So they came up during these 3 months, and you felt somehow the things are not the way they used to be. The same way as well when it comes to the catalog design. So what we did is actually we made a limited edition, and you know, you have the catalog, and on top there was this kind of aluminum bag, a soft pack, and it was weird because it said, can we eat the catalog? So, and then we discussed it, is this eatable? And so the funny thing is, because they said, you know, our research from our friends and so, they work at the Silicon Valley, they have to work 24 hours, 7 days a week, so they need a lot of nutritions. So they got all this stuff over there. So actually I thought it was beautiful, because the catalog, you know, this is the simple version, but then on top of it you had this bag. And I just liked the idea, and so later on they had as well, you know, the biennial was this program called The Present in Drag, which shows you already, it's really talking about as well when underground becomes overground, when the niches get into a little bit more into the center. So when you open up the catalog, you have seen these imageries, and of course it's a fitting by Dorma, we work together, of course you bring it always in. The whole thing actually, it doesn't really look like art, but they pretend to that it's art, because what they do, and this is a quote taken out of the catalog, is artists use the aesthetics of advertising and product design. Consumer culture and its media borrow the aesthetics and strategies of art. Shock factor is nearly impossible to achieve. The boundaries between high art and commerce are becoming increasingly fluid. You have to understand, I am working for the industry, and then it's like I stepped on the other side of the table, and then I had to look, put on different glasses to see, okay, this is the industry, this is what we believe in, the strategies, and now the artists coming there abuse this kind of knowledge, and then you create this kind of imagery where you don't know, is this still a commercial, do they want to sell you something, or is this really about art? And what's interesting is they came, and this is like maybe 4 or 5 months ago, they were having these questions. Is wheat poisonous? Is Iraq a country? Is France a democracy? Do I like Shakira? Am I suffering from depression? Are we at war? Is Donald Trump going to be president? And now we know he did it, even if he couldn't believe it. So, welcome to the Postmodern Contemporary. The future feels like the past, familiar, predictable, immutable. Leaving the present with the uncertainties of the future. You will see, I will get into this moving type, but I wanted to share with you these thoughts because I do not want to show you only images and effects and so, because this is just one thing. We have to understand, why do we use certain things? I always believe in aesthetics for substance, and we have to understand this is just a channel, it's just an opportunity. Just because it's there, it doesn't need necessarily we have to do it. But if it makes sense, then let's work it out. And then you see these images, and it's not fashion, it's art, I don't know, it's all in between as well with these kind of imageries. You know, we use digital effects. Somehow it's cool, so some certain people it's appealing, others really don't get it. It's very on the edge right now, because you walk through the city in Berlin, you have seen advertisements like this. And I think it's cool in a way. I want to die with nature, not become her manager. So this makes you think. There is a kind of an anarchy to it. It's a different generation. And they're saying, stop looking at me like I'm the future. So what they're saying is all the norms we have established, they question them brutally. There is actually nothing particularly realistic about the world today. A world in which investing in fiction is maybe more profitable than betting on reality. It is this genre shift from sci-fi to fantasy that makes inspiring, opens up for grabs, non-binary. So they question the whole cultural upbringing, what we have experienced, as talking for my generation. And this is as well just another clip where you see this is taken in Berlin, and you have this kind of advertising commercial when it comes down. You see it's BMW, drive now, and then this woman or boy, I don't know, transgender, is laying on the car, having a kind of unhealthy green mix, is drinking, you know, then the face. So there is something where they keep us a little bit in between. And it's up to us to find our own way how we handle that. But it's all this kind of aesthetics. They're coming from technology-inspired medias. So now to the next one with the next project, which has started already some years ago, 16 years ago. And when you see this, it's just this magazine, Brandeis, we have started from so many years. And as I said, it's print. But print knows now it's all about the community, and we have to get access to you guys in a way. So, and we know with social media, we have all these devices. You know, we start talking, we like to share content, we bring it in. And these kind of animations, we never thought about when we started with them because the media wasn't there at that point. This is the first generation of Brandeis. We made a difference in the economical world because we used a lot of different photography. You know, we tried to free the business world from all those such cliches. And meanwhile, because we have always a focus on one topic for each issue, it helps us to have the cover and a very strong graphic design. But even here, through the fact that we are witnessing more and more digitalization, even the surface, the design language has changed for Brandeis. And now it looks more like this. And actually, Schall's job was the best sold issue ever. And it's really hard because we had a long discussion in the office, and I mean not the office, but with the team working on it. Are we able to say so? You know, because it is, you know, I don't know. So it's all, let's say the next cover then was all this kind of, is like an essay, you know. So, but you bring it on a cover. But in between we use all these kind of emojis. And it's just that you have to be aware what's happening around. And then you have to take the decision as a graphic designer or communication designer, does it make sense to bring it in? And over the years, as I said, we slowly started start the last 2 years that we make for each issue a trailer. And these kind of trailers give you the opportunity that you actually really can extend the printed media. So there's a dialogue. So just a little graphic, and sometimes I'm still thinking, first we have the print, and then we think about the moving image. The next step has to be, of course, we think the brand as a video channel platform, and then we create the print. So let's see, this is all discussions in the industry. But of course, if you have these kind of things, make this as well, it is this momentum where the content and the typography and the sound gets together. And it's just this pure heartbeat, which in the combination with this tattoo tartar, which is more childish, you feel the urge, you feel that there is a certain need to talk about health system, and this was then the issue. And when I get all together, it's like you create your own universe again. And it's all really little micro narratives to express always the content of each issue. That brought me as well to a quote from Willem Flosser, who said, "The line of the text and the timeline are analogous, and over centuries the logic of reading became the logic of the sequence of events. We are," says Flosser, "in a revolution of thinking and communication, since neither text nor image alone can sufficiently describe reality. A beautiful word written is great, but maybe the emotion, people would love to have always this kind of emotional impact, because it's all about this economy of attention. And we all know our concentration level drops so easily down. You know, we all know this. We are all on the emails, and we call as well hyperlink generation. So all these buzzwords, but we feel it. You read something, oh, something clicks, you go directly next, so you can't focus. So I was invited to do a presentation for Kenso. We did a very simple 3D mapping, really, really badly done. It was a whole idea, because at that time, LVMH, the luxury product, I mean, this huge company who has all these Louis Vuitton, all these big brands, they got 2 designers on board for Kenso. It was an old 80s brand, and they revamped it in a way. And they did it with Humberto Leon and Carol Lim. They called us because they loved 032C and Garage Magazine. But the job was to make a corporate design for packaging and the logo. So we send them that, because this is actually in a way what the unexpected expected in a way. So because they're not interested anymore into this kind of only classical, traditionally thinking corporate design agencies as well. Where I have to say, because I work for BMW and I appreciate this kind of thinking, but I realize as well that these rules are as well slowly questionable, because when we do a lot of architecture, you talk and spend a lot of money over years to work it out, that it fits into the DNA of the corporate design, and then you have to make sure in the long run that people make a selfie. And to get people on the booth to make a selfie, you have to step out of the box. So the whole time you're dealing being inside the box, understanding the logic of inside the box, and now you have to get out of the box. And so with this one, we started to have this kind of strappy logo. And then we had a discussion about Paris. The fashion industry, for them, Paris is very important. So we put it underneath, but it didn't really feel right, because it was, again, too classy. So we put it in the O. And then we thought, okay, it's a little bit more younger, a bit more dynamic. So what is if it starts turning? It's very simple. But what happened is, from just this little mental step, putting the Paris underneath, so it's becoming we are haute couture, or we putting in the, oh, hey guys, we become a little bit more fashionable, we become a little bit more collaborative, we want to play with you. So it's like, how can you take away certain walls, in a way, we are conditioned with. So we did, among a lot of patterns and designs, these were just the shopping bags we designed for them. And I'm sure a few weeks ago they had this huge collaboration with H&M. And what they have done, they took actually our shopping bag design from the corporate design, they produced it in a new texture, in leather. So you could buy it. So it is as well this kind of, they're playing like the artist collective this. They don't take themselves serious. But it's not that in the end they're becoming a laughing stock. You have to understand, if you become too serious, people will ignore you. they're not interested in you anymore. Because what the next generation is all about is they reconfigure standards we have established. And this is for them, it's okay, it can be big branding, it can be neurotic, look at the patterns. It's not that we all run around, I don't want to feed another cliche, but what it's happening is that we have to understand that we're coming from Bauhaus and Co., and now all this kind of system of references will be taken differently from this generation. This is then as well another little trailer from the Berlin Biennial, but just read the text. So it could have been as well a commercial from Kenzo, but then you read the word terrorists, and then you know it's the art world, and then you see these fashion codes, and they're talking about NSA, and then you know everything is possible. And it's the way how they recode our reality. It's interesting. And this brings me to the last study case I would like to share with you. It's Garage, the magazine. It started 6 years ago, and I met Dasha, and then she had already the vision to create a magazine which is really focusing on the fusion of art and fashion. And she always said, you know, Mike, I would love to have a kind of a human touch within this digital age. So we created this lettering, and it's all handmade. When she visited me in the factory, I had my very first issue I did in 1983, and at that time when I was a kid, I was working with Letraset. You know, I mean, desktop publishing didn't exist. So she said, I love the typography, can we do Letraset? And I said, wow, Letraset is really something, you know, it's a kind of craft. So it's never really perfect. So, but I thought, okay, how can I, because Dasha is way younger than I am, and I do not want to be nostalgic. You know, I don't mind looking back. I know we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, but at the same time, we have to shape the future. And so I said, okay, she wants to have the Letraset feel, how can I create it and not to be cheesy? So every typography we have chosen, like the Futura or the Universe or Helvetica, we tried it, and somehow you realize actually typography is propaganda. Every brand is capturing typography, a certain alphabet, a certain look. You feel the Lufthansa booklet is a certain typography. You know, it's really, it's interesting to think about how can we use typography, the families, the fonts, but at the same time, how can we change them, that they become free from ideology if there's something like this happening. So nevertheless, I thought about a computer software. And what we did is, I thought, why don't we just take all these fonts we like the Universe, Helvetica, blah, 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 we put them together, and we let the computer, the software, decide which letter he's taking. So it is like completely, I mean, the fucking nightmare to any typography. You know, I know. It's more like a concept, so we call it concept type. So, because it looks horrible, but at the same time, you have the feeling it is handmade. When you have this in a whole line, actually, even the whole copy is completely like this. The funny thing is Sasha realized this all later on because she checked everything on her BlackBerry at that time. So we were quite happy. Later on she realized, oh, this looks all a bit awkward, doesn't it, Mike? I said, yeah, that was the idea. You know, so you see the O's and you see the T's. And I found this a kind of a cool way to bring back and kind of an analogous, you know, something from the past, I know from the 80s, to give it an update, to reinterpret it so that the machine is taking the decisions. The idea with Garage magazine, the beauty of it, we have access to a lot of really incredible celebrities. So in the first issue we had as well, or maybe the second, we had Courtney Love. She has an incredible voice, and so she gave a little poem, and we just made this very analog. So we were in the factory painting
Courtney Love, and I am reading my take on A Spoonful of Sugar from Mary Poppins for Garage magazine. In every job that must be done, there is my procrastination. One finds the bones and slap, it's all the same. And every task by the undertaker is soaked in bloody cake, exotic meats, dead larks, and shopping sprees. And a spoonful of strychnine helps his life of black and gray pass so far away into red, red clouds. And a spoonful of arsenic one can't even taste helps your broken heart fade forever, not just now. A vulture feathering her nest does it deliberate and slow, gathering carrion and worms and glides to warn you so slow, so intent in her pursuit to warn you of the storm that hasn't stopped from the day that you were born. You're in the cold and there is no place to keep you warm. The hornets buzz around you, their nest has fallen from the willows. The flowers tried to warn you, now they wilt because they buzz on your misery. They're coming just like plagues, and they think that you don't believe in guilt. And here you are surrounded by the grind and the buzz, fun for them, but not for you, no, never. Just a spoonful of hemlock helps it all go away, forever and ever and ever. Just a spoonful of cyanide makes sure that no one came, and you won't have to wake up. No, not ever.
This was actually the first generation of this magazine, where we tried to stretch the line of analog aesthetics, which was really great, this kind of handmade movement. But as I said in the print, you have to be open what comes next. And then we got into augmented reality. We merged fashion and art, and then we understood, no, we have to merge actually paper, I mean print design, and digital. How could it work? The good thing is, as I worked as well with Berlin Biennial, the best way to start is always with artists, because they have a certain freedom to do. So we talked to Jeff Koons, and he is doing these incredible sculptures, as you may know. So he said, okay, let's do a virtual sculpture. And the magazine, the cover, actually becomes the physical plinth for the piece. So it is really some years back, because I've seen it now that's coming more and more, but we did this many, many years ago, so we started to see, okay, what would happen if you create an application with all this embedded information, you can download them for free from iTunes, and you start playing around. So you have the magazine, and on top of it, something happens. And nowadays, we're working strongly with the Mill in New York, so everything becomes way more stable in terms of that, you know, the very first beta generations, sometimes it flipped away when the light hits the cover, but now it's really good. And so, you know, it was really the idea when you see all these different magazines in a way, they're laying around in the factory, and you took a closer look, it says download the Garage app and scan this cover. And then you get Jeff Koons' first virtual sculpture, the ladybug, and suddenly it makes plop. I mean, you see just really now the image, you have to actually experience it by yourself. It's really amazing. This was the very first one, and we took it really to different levels. And it was suddenly a kind of step for the industry. They understood if it's possible to bring up a sculpture, maybe we can bring up a little bag. So we were talking to, you know, all these Louis Vuitton, MS, and all these big brands, and they're getting interested because it's easy to imagine if you have here a photo shoot, it creates an augmented story. So we thought, okay, let's give them a try. So what we did is maybe we start thinking about fake ads. So we screwed Dolce & Gabbana, you know, with our typography. We put an image next to it, so people, the reader, didn't really know at that point, is this an ad, is this an editorial, what is it actually? But they read down there is this Garage application. And if you download this, suddenly happens. The image became alive on your screen, actually. It created a kind of a steer, to be honest. And we did this as well with MAC, this cosmetic brand, and the images were all taken by Daniel Sandwald. And just look at this is incredible. And when you see this, how the drops get into the eyes, so we knew, okay, if we start giving them a kind of an opportunity, because you have to understand, in the long run, it's always about making coins. So, you know, it is an attitude, it starts with an attitude, and then somehow it becomes a business. And when it comes to business, you have to work on a very professional skill, because you deal with a lot of professional people in the industry. As we said, we start with this because we have to, you know, there's a huge competition in all these magazines. You have to be the coolest, the sexiest, the hottest, whatever. So, and you have to be innovative all the time. And that's why it's interesting to have those kind of technology, at least the knowledge about these technologies, but it's up to us to make it to a sexy product in a way. So we got to Fendi, and they were actually the first company who said, okay, let's do it. So in the back, you see the normal printed double spread of the advertorial, of the advertising, but somehow the imagery becomes alive. which of course you have to work on it. Once you do this image photo shoot for the campaign, you have to think already, okay, it will be later on a movable image. So we start, okay, this is the next step for Garage. Let's entertain this. Man and woman.
Fashion, styles, models, beauties.
So this was actually an introduction for Garage to the industry, and then we got Marvel. And with Marvel, we got the copyrights as well in a way to deal with their superstars. So we took all the supermodels, we turned them into their iconic heroes, and then they created this in a way with Garage magazine. Really playing Hollywood in a way. The music, pretty drama, very American. But this is the whole idea that the magazine actually becomes a projection for collaborations. And this is very fashionable these days, that you start to collaborate, to, you know, it's not only brands and brands, it's really like magazines become a platform for the industry, and you have to open up to this. So this was happening with Marvel, and the fact that we're working with Charlotte Stockdale, she's the wife of Mark Newson, who has designed with Jonathan Ive on the Apple iWatch. So we had access to Apple, and at that time they bought Dr. Beat, the headphones, and then we said, okay, this is another cool collaboration. Shows you actually that it's not only about moving types, it's about moving times, it's about moving possibilities, it's about a lot of changes going on. And as you say here, these were all the models, and then they became their own avatars. And this is something really in a world where we realize everything merges, and we have to be very collaborative, and we have to create a certain style, because through style you get the access to certain communities, you build up reliability. You know, it's a kind of a cultural momentum, and then of course you bring all this together on these mega platforms like here iTunes, and you go in there and through the design. A very little trailer here is the last, and then you see it's digital and analog and augmented. That's it. So, because in the long run, when I go back to this very early image, I realize we are on an incredible journey. I don't want to be a moralist, and so I don't know if everything is right, going the right direction. I have no idea. But what I understand, in my point of view, as a communication designer or working as maybe a consultant or a design consultant, you know, for brands and magazines, I understand that the culture needs this kind of awareness, and the brands as well, because it is really, and I realized this as well when I was preparing myself for today. I heard myself saying all the time, oh, I have to do this thing for moving times. No, not moving times, it was actually moving types. And I realized, oh, wow, this kind of, I don't know, there is really something, if the time is changing in a way, then let's just go ahead and try to find a dialogue with the technology. And it started with this one, as we all know. And nowadays, we're a little bit further. Thank you.